Welcome back to IBeyond, the channel that helps IB students go beyond just memorizing by truly understanding psychology. Our goal is to make complex IB topics simple, relatable, and exam-ready. Today, we're going through a set of slides on evaluating experiments, a key skill in IB psychology that helps you score higher by critically analyzing studies. We start with the concept of priming. Priming is when exposure to one stimulus influences how you respond to another stimulus afterward. It's like when you hear the word yellow and then more quickly think of banana. This happens because priming activates specific associations in your memory right before you're given a new task. This is essential in psychology because it shows how subtle cues can shape our thoughts without us realizing it. The next slide builds on that by explaining how priming works in practice. After being exposed to a concept, it becomes easier to recall related ideas. For instance, after reading words related to old age, people might walk more slowly. But priming doesn't always help. It can also make it harder to think of unrelated concepts. This means priming can both boost recall and limit your cognitive flexibility. Then we move on to demand characteristics, which are subtle cues in an experiment that tell participants what the researcher expects. When participants pick up on these cues, they might change their behavior to match what they think the study is about. This is problematic because it's a type of extraneous variable that can distort the results, making the findings less reliable. Closely tied to that is the idea of order effects. This happens when the sequence in which participants do tasks affects their responses. For example, doing a memory test after a math test might produce different results than doing it first. To minimize this, researchers often use counterbalancing, where they vary the order for different participants. This ensures that order doesn't become a confounding variable. Now, we have a handy terminology slide that groups these ideas. Under demand characteristics, we see terms like expectancy effect, reactivity, screw-you effect, social desirability bias, and optimism bias. These are all ways participants might unintentionally or intentionally alter their behavior. Under validity, we're reminded to consider things like internal validity, construct validity, external validity, ecological validity, and population validity. Finally, under order effects, we have fatigue, interference, practice, and boredom effects. These show how repeated measures can wear people out or improve performance just from practice. Next, we get into practice examples. The first scenario involves a researcher telling participants he's testing whether men are better at problem solving than women. The women feel offended and don't put in effort. This is an example of the screw-you effect, where participants deliberately act opposite to what's expected, often out of defiance or annoyance. In another example, Mark goes to see a counselor for study strategies. The counselor watches him solve a math problem, and he becomes so anxious he makes many mistakes. This illustrates reactivity, when people change their behavior simply because they know they're being observed. Then we have Sarah, who is told she's interviewing introverts. As a result, she doesn't ask probing questions. This is an expectancy effect, where her expectations based on the label given influence how she interacts, potentially biasing the data she collects. Moving on, Jerry discusses his long marriage, praising his wife and saying he doesn't remember ever fighting. This is an example of social desirability bias, where people give overly positive answers to look good or avoid embarrassment. Gary is asked about his sugar consumption and claims he eats almost no sugar, which again shows social desirability bias. People often underreport behaviors they think are viewed negatively. Finally, Jason, who hasn't studied for exams, says he probably won't fail because bad things happen to others, not him. This is optimism bias, where someone believes they're less likely to experience negative outcomes compared to others. If you have any questions about these concepts or want to see more practice examples, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to IBeyond, where we help you master IB psychology one concept at a time.